Research shows that 1 of every 2 people will be diagnosed with a mental health illness in their lifetime. Now, if you're married, there's 2 of you. So the chances that one of you is going to face a mental health illness within your lifetime is pretty significant. Join me today as I talk about how you can nurture mental health with your spouse. Now, there is a variety of different mental health illnesses that if they're not worked through and turned into mental health, they can become a disorder. My husband and I both personally faced mental illness. My husband struggled with some significant depression, and I came into marriage with some pretty significant eating disorders. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you how for years we actually enabled growing the mental health illness, and eventually how we began to nurture our mental health together. What is mental illness? Ultimately, it is negative thoughts that are taking over your day-to-day life, taking over your day-to-day interactions. When you come into marriage, you come in with baggage. There's no one out there that hasn't faced suffering and trauma that happened in their past. But when you fall in love and you get married, you don't usually talk too much about the trauma of the past or the suffering of the past. We love to pretend as human beings that it's in the past and that it's not affecting us. But that is not true. Those negative thoughts come from negative beliefs. I love what one psychologist said when he said, trauma is the moments we picked up something that wasn't ours to carry. So when those moments of suffering, when those horrific things happen in your life, there's a situation that happens in our brain where we believe that it's like our fault. Especially children do that. So there were things that happened in my husband and I's past that we took on beliefs about ourselves that were not true, but we didn't realize that's what we did. So what begins to happen is that there's a pain in our past, there's suffering in our past that creates these negative beliefs, that create these negative thoughts within us. And we're trying to control that pain in the future. We don't want that to happen again, right? If we had an angry parent, that was a lot of pain that was created in those moments of their anger. So we're trying to control it in the future. We don't want the people that we love to get angry because it brings us to feel, oh my goodness, we're going to walk through the same thing we walked through in our past. So when there is pain in our past that we haven't worked through and we're trying to control it in the future, it creates chaos in our present. And that was my husband and I's life. When we were about 10 years into our marriage, full on into running a business and raising 4 kids, there was a lot of chaos because both of us were trying to control our worlds so we didn't face the same pain of our past. I love what Richard Rohr says when he says, you either let your pain transform you or you transmit it. We were transmitting our pain onto each other, onto our children, and it was greatly hurting us, our spouse, and our marriage. Our family was greatly suffering. There was angry blow-ups. There was silence and withdrawal. There was a sense of significant melancholy, like the oxygen was sucked out of the environment of our home. There was significant suffering in our home. And what we didn't realize is that we were actually enabling each other's mental illness. We were actually contributing and encouraging each other to increase our negative thoughts. I'm going to talk through the different ways that we were enabling and hope that this might help you see if there is mental illness in your marriage or in your home, how you might be enabling it so you can stop before we did. It took us way too long to stop enabling each other's mental illness. So one of the ways we enabled each other's mental illness is we had sympathy for each other. We felt sorry for each other, which is one of the benefits that our villain gets out of negative thinking. It's why it wants to keep thinking these negative thoughts. We made excuses for each other. I would say, well, it's those bad things that happen in my past that make me be this way. Or, the way you're acting, that's because you didn't get what you needed as a kid, and we just made excuses for it. We enabled it by just believing and accepting it's who we were. I believed that I would always suffer from negative body image and never be able to see food from a healthy, nutritious perspective. We both believed that my husband was just always going to face depression, and he was always going to be overly sensitive to things that people said. We enabled each other by blaming our parents. He loved to be angry at my parents for choices they made that impacted me, and I loved to blame his parents for things they chose that had a negative impact on him. But the more we blamed, the more we enabled each other's victim stories. We enabled each other by tolerating those behaviors. My husband, tolerated that I would shut down in shame for days when an outfit didn't fit the way I wanted it to fit. Or, I tolerated that he would withdraw and unengage from the family for hours and days. And we coddled each other. We just let those cone of shame experiences go on. We just tiptoed around each other. All of these ways that we were enabling took a huge toll on each of us individually and on our marriage. It took such a toll that we didn't even know if we wanted to be married anymore because we were so miserable. Finally, we woke up and we began to take responsibility. And taking responsibility looked very specific. One, we shifted from sympathy to empathy. Now, empathy and sympathy are very different from each other. Empathy is I understand what it must feel like as you walk with the thoughts that you're thinking. At the same time, I believe in you, and I believe you have the ability and the power to think new thoughts. We stopped excusing each other. We started finding ways to have honest conversation, which helped us stop being so overly sensitive to what each other was saying. We could actually start hearing about the impact of our choices on each other and our kids. We stopped believing that this mental negative thinking or this mental illness was who we were. We started getting honest that it was actually undealt with pain from our past, and we started facing it. We started taking responsibility for what we were believing that was producing these negative thoughts, and we started working through those negative beliefs and found what was more true. We began to change our thinking one moment at a time. What it really took was getting significantly honest, rather than living in the lie that these negative thoughts were telling us and the lies that we believed from those moments of trauma in our past. Now, it didn't happen overnight. It took time. It took us working together to get honest about how we were actually contributing to each other's negative thinking that was growing the mental illness. I want to invite you, if you are dealing with mental illness yourself or with your spouse, there is hope. It doesn't need to be who you are. Those days of suffering, of sitting in our home, really just overcome by these negative thoughts that felt like they were who we were. They were us. It was hard. And I understand how hard it can be. And I want to encourage you, you can heal. And healing requires you take full responsibility for the future you long for. If you want to take full responsibility and you aren't sure how to do that, you want support, please know my DMs are always open on Instagram. And you also can reach out to me through my email, which is in the comments below. Thank you for joining me today. And if this episode was helpful for you, would you give it a thumbs up? And would you share in the comments below? Just share with me if mental illness has impacted you or your marriage in some way. Thanks so much for joining me. Don't forget there's a free gift waiting for you in the caption underneath this video. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.